New details on Donald Trump's fourth indictment. NBC News has learned that law enforcement officials are now expecting the former president to surrender to a Fulton County jail no earlier than Thursday of next week. Fulton County DA Fani Willis has given Trump, along with his 18 co-defendants, until Friday to voluntarily turn themselves in to face charges related to attempts to overturn the 2020 election results in Georgia. One of those co-defendants is Kenneth Chesebro, a Trump lawyer and the alleged architect behind the so-called fake electors scheme. This week, a review of footage on January 6th appears to show Chesebro on the grounds of the Capitol the day of the insurrection. But there is no indication he entered the Capitol. Chesebro previously invoked the Fifth Amendment when asked by investigators if he was in Washington during that week. To say tensions are high around the Georgia case would be an understatement. Thanks to Georgia state law, the names of Fulton County grand jurors were revealed among the pages of that unsealed indictment. And it didn't take long for their identities and personal information to leak online as well, leading to harassment and threats of violence. Now the FBI is stepping in, joining the Fulton County Sheriff's Office to help investigate all of these threats. Getting this hour started for us is NBC News correspondent Julie Sirkin, live from Fulton County, Georgia. Julie, as of this morning, NBC now knows Donald Trump is going to turn himself in, or plans to turn himself in, to that jail no earlier than Thursday. So what more do we know about that purported timeline, as well as the surrenders of his 18 other co-defendants?
Well, Katie, the timing is interesting because it's just a day after the first Republican debate in Milwaukee, a debate that the former president says he plans to skip, at least for now. Of course, plans can change, but he plans to turn himself in no earlier than next Thursday. He has until midday Friday to do so. So do, by the way, his other 18 co-defendants. And I got to tell you, my producer, Liz Brown-Kaiser, and I just went through the booking info to see if any of those defendants snuck their way into this jail behind me. There's this entrance. There's also a back entrance, and none of them were booked yet. Now, of course, anything can happen. This jail is open 24/7 for booking, so they can really arrive at any time of day or night. But so far, that has not happened yet. Again, remember, the judge set the deadline for next Friday for them to do so. But of course, as we move forward in the timeline here, right, in the booking process, we have a couple of defendants who are actually trying to move this to a federal case. I'm talking about Mark Meadows, the former chief of staff. His evidentiary hearing is actually set for 9 days from now to look into that. But of course, we don't expect anything other than delays in terms of the trial itself to change. Even if it does move to federal court for Meadows, for example, the parameters of it are going to stay the same exactly as DA Fani Willis here outlined them.
Julie, DA Fani Willis has proposed in a scheduling order that's been submitted to the court that the arraignments for these 19 defendants take place the week of September 5th. She's also proposed a March 4th, 2024 trial date. Obviously, there's stuff that's very fluid here, but could we expect those dates to be cemented into place?
And Katie, you know better than pretty much anybody that in a case this large with so many defendants, either one of them can make motions to appeal, delaying the proposed trial date, delaying even the arraignments that are to take place. Though in this case, they usually happen about 2 weeks after the booking process is complete. That being said, the former president has already taken to Truth Social, his social media platform, blasting the DA for setting that March 4th proposed date, because that's just a day before Super Tuesday, which is basically the biggest primary event where primaries kick off in several key states for the Republican election for the 2024 presidential race. And so Trump is blasting that date. Of course, Fani Willis, the DA here, has said multiple times that she wants the first hearing to happen within 6 months, which some experts say is very ambitious considering the scope, the size of this case, but also the really sprawling list of defendants here, any of which, like I said, could make a motion to delay, to appeal. Certainly conversations are ongoing with all parties, with the judge as well that she proposed these dates to. But as we saw in the federal 2020 election case against the former president, one in which he already pushed to delay that trial until 2026, 2 years after the presidential election, we do expect him to continue making that motion in this case, trying to delay all of these trials, the 4 simultaneous trials he's facing, until after the 2024 presidential election. And I should note, a race where he is currently still the GOP frontrunner.
Julie Sirkin, thanks so much for getting us started this 9 o'clock hour. I appreciate it. And joining me now is Maya Wiley, the president and CEO of the Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights, and also a civil rights attorney. Maya, it's good to see you. Let's actually stay with the Fulton County case before we talk about some of the other Trump cases that are going on. You know, We've talked about protective orders. We've talked about gag orders possibly being imposed in other cases involving Donald Trump. We've heard the news. Not only has the grand jurors in Fulton County been threatened and doxxed online, but we also know that federal judge Tanya Chutkan, in that election interference case for Donald Trump, she's also been threatened, and a Texas woman has been arrested. Do you think there's a very real possibility in the state of Georgia involving this Fulton County case that Donald Trump could be gag ordered, that he could be gagged in some way to prevent some violence from happening?
Oh, I certainly think it's a possibility. And, you know, Katie, the sad thing here is this is exactly what we have seen in election cycles. Election cycles in and of themselves, we see a spike in violence and in threats, particularly hate motivated. And we've seen that Donald Trump himself, both as a candidate back in 2015 and consistently, has been willing to provoke violence. So it's certainly possible. I would expect it to be something we'd be concerned about. Remember that one of the counts in the Fulton County indictment includes the incitement of threats and violence against Ruby Freeman, a poll worker.
Maya, there was a promise made by Donald Trump that he was going to reveal, quote, a large and complex, detailed but irrefutable report to be revealed at a press conference. It was called off. Trump posted on Truth Social, you know, his lawyers are going to put in legal filings. But let's talk the law on this. Do you think that he actually heeded legal advice, probably for the first time, from his lawyers telling him you're actually risking your defense the more that you're putting out a theory of defense for people to see?
Yeah, it's the way it certainly appears. It's impossible to know, of course, what's happening in those conversations. But, you know, Donald Trump is one who likes to talk. He likes to say what he wants to say, and he doesn't like to be told what to say. We know that from his tweets, even as president. You could tell the difference between his own personal tweets versus ones that someone crafted for him. And we've seen this behavior from Donald Trump even as early as, remember, James Comey, when he fired James Comey, or the Ukraine call to President Zelensky, you know, these times when he makes these statements, and then he has all these public conversations about what they said or what they mean. Sometimes he contradicts himself, says different things. And if you're an attorney, as you know, Katie, the last thing you want is your client going around talking about a case, possibly saying inconsistent things, making promises that can't be kept, saying there's evidence that is not evidence, because all that does is damage your case. It's very hard to imagine that if there was exculpatory evidence, if there was evidence that would prove that Donald Trump had not committed a crime, it would have gone unnoticed or unstated by lawyers or by representatives or by Donald Trump himself all these years and lead up to these indictments.
Yeah, especially in Fulton County, Maya. That was a 2.5-year investigation by Fani Willis. One last question before we go to break, and we're going to stay on Fulton County right now. Rudy Giuliani is saying that he's going to follow suit with Mark Meadows, that removal to federal court from state court that Meadows has done and that we expect Donald Trump to do. 8 of the 19 defendants in the Fulton County indictment, Maya, they're lawyers, putting aside the shame that they bring to the profession that we have. Do you think it's actually a viable thing for Rudy Giuliani to claim, I may not have been a federal official, but I was acting at the behest of or at the direction of a federal official, that being Donald Trump, when I did the conduct that's being alleged in this indictment?
It's certainly very hard to imagine that this will work. I certainly don't think it should. It's the same as Rudy Giuliani acting or pretending that he's like a White House counsel when he's a private citizen, or Steve Bannon running around saying, I have executive privilege, when he wasn't a staff member of the White House. You don't get to say you're a public official when you're not a public official. You don't get to say you're a public official because you have at one time or currently work for a public official in that person's private capacity. And that's exactly, to the extent Rudy Giuliani holds himself out as an attorney to Donald Trump, it's in his private capacity. Remember, he was even saying that back when we had the first impeachment with his visit to the Ukraine, trying to get a criminal prosecution started against Hunter Biden, all of that, what he publicly made clear, he was doing it in his private capacity. It's the only capacity he could have as someone who is not hired by the White House.
Maya, you're doing some throwback there. First impeachment, we've had two. Fourth indictment, right? Two impeachment, fourth indictment, one-term president. Maya Wiley sticking around. We're going to continue this conversation